I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. All I know is that I must kill. You know, there's plenty of cool stuff dropping when Omens of Destruction hits on December 12th, but out of all the paid lords and DLC content, I'm most excited to play ARBAAL, the newest free character and officially the 100th legendary lord in the trilogy. Introduced all the way back in, I believe, 4th or 5th edition, ARBAAL was one of those OG characters that appeared in the Champions of Chaos supplement alongside Valnir the Reaper, Echoed Hellbrass, Tikal the Denied One, and many others. That was in like 1996. I was 4 years old. Still had poop in my pants. But while he's undeniably been around for ages, he didn't leave a massive impact on the setting, and in fact kind of disappeared for a while, and was eventually supplanted by the fresh new champions of Warhammer's 8th edition, which is to say he wasn't really relevant in the setting again until the end times, after an almost 2-decade hiatus, and even then, he was still a little bit of a footnote. In Khorne's case, Falkia the Bloody definitely stole some of his shine and a lot of Khorne's love. They're heavy petting in the back rooms of the Brass Citadel, while ARBAAL cries in a corner with puppy dog eyes. Absolutely cocked. Still though, like many other lords from the Warhammer trilogy, Game 3 of the series and the Immortal Empires combined campaign often grant lords a new lease on life, and there's some really cool stuff CA could do with them if they feel so inclined. And if Epidemius in Thrones of Decay is any indication, there's reason to expect quality here, even if he is just a free lord, because I actually think Epidemius had the best designed and most fun campaign out of the 4 lords last time around. And like I said, he was free. See if that holds true for the free LC this time around. Not sure that it will, but it would be nice to see it again. Now, ARBAAL has been around for quite literally millennia. First showed up 800 years before the God King Sigmar Heldenhammer, and by that point, he was already bored of beating the shit out of everyone in the Chaos Wastes. Figured he had but one chance for an actual challenge, so he rode into the Blood God's domain to fight none other than Khorne himself. We know how that turned out for Skarbrand. Probably wouldn't have gone a whole lot better for ARBAAL the Undefeated, but ARBAAL had the wherewithal to, approach him from the front and not stab him in the back. And what occurred isn't exactly clear, but the Blood God must have been impressed, because ARBAAL would help the ever-chosen Azavar Kul lead a vast war host to the gates of Kislev in the Great War against Chaos in 2302, almost 3,000 years later, which means immortality and a healthy infusion of performance-enhancing blood doping from Papa Karneth must have been on the agenda if he was still kicking after 3 millennia or so. At the walls of Prague, as winter fell, ARBAAL breached the gates alongside Kolek Suneater, a monster so tall he could literally peer over the walls of the city and rampage through their darkened streets. Temples fell, thousands were slain, and Prague was warped forever, transformed by the hellish power of the Ether. He was one of the few to survive that ill-fated campaign, and was clearly not held responsible for the Horde's defeat, because his name wouldn't make sense then, would it? And for many centuries, undoubtedly, was first in Karneth's esteem, having been granted the Blood God's personal fleshhound, a creature as large and ferocious as Karanak, and was kept as a personal pet by him, and the Destroyer, a weapon gifted only to his greatest champion. Again, ARBAAL would disappear from history after the Great War against Chaos, until the coming of the End Times, where he was widely considered the mightiest of Archaon the Ever-Chosen's 13 lieutenants. In fact, so mighty was the Destroyer of Khorne that the captain of the Phoenix Guard, Kharadrian, believed he could have routed an entire High Elf war host single-handedly. Which does not happen very often in Warhammer Fantasy. We've seen Grimgor solo Hellpit, we've seen Kroak destroy the demonic invasion outside Itza and deliver it to the pizza, but other than that, there aren't a whole lot of examples of a single character taking on an entire army by themselves and winning. I don't think we ever even see that from a character as powerful as Archaon. Unfortunately for our boy ARBAAL, he never got the chance to finish that fight, because after slaughtering hundreds of Ulthuan's finest, Kharadrian was infused with the Wind of Fire and became the incarnate of Akshi, striking the killing blow after a long and brutal duel that decapitated the Chaos Lord, while his mount was ripped apart by Ashtari the Phoenix. And so ARBAAL never had the chance to mutate grotesquely into a mindless rampaging Chaos Spawn, more's the pity. With that said, to only lose one duel in 3,000 plus years is pretty goddamn impressive, especially when your end only comes to an incarnate, which is basically cheating, and there's some fun stuff Creative Assembly could do, and should do, with that whole if you ever lose, you get turned into a Chaos Spawn element of his lore. But before we talk mechanics, let's talk start position, because this is the framework around which his entire playthrough will revolve, and if he starts in a boring spot, he'll be a lot less appealing to play. Without question, he spends the vast majority of his time in the Chaos Wastes, slaying bros and banging hoes up north with the ruinous powers, but I really don't want another Chaos Waste start right now, and there's some fun lore blurbs that could hint at where he might go instead. During the end times, ARBAAL brought havoc to the lands of Ind in the Far East. Whether they marched there, sailed there, or were teleported there in some obscene ritual, I have no idea, because it does seem prohibitively far away from everything else, and linking up with those main war hosts and Archaon the Ever-Chosen again after ravaging Ind would have taken a very long time, but into the jungles of Ind did the Undefeated march with Dakala the Denied One from Slaanesh, where those rival gods teamed up and offered up tens of thousands of souls to the deities above. Now, I believe Creative Assembly have said multiple times that they're opening up more of the Immortal Empires map for this update. I know they've confirmed map expansions in general for the future, but it's a fair assumption that changes are coming in the next several weeks as well. With that said, looking at this updated map of Skulltaker's start location in Lustria, I don't see any impactful changes to Ind or Koresh in the bottom right. I don't see any new regions or provinces there, so unless they're being real sneaky and purposely hiding some of that, my guess is they won't be opened up for Omens of Destruction. Which is sad and unfortunate, because fighting in those jungles of the Far East and launching an invasion northwards into Cathay would have been a really interesting and unique and fun start position. CA could still put them in the Far East somewhere, but without an opened Ind, Chaos Waste may indeed be on the agenda for ARBAAL. I don't want it, I don't need it, I feel like there are cooler spots to put him, but at the moment, might be leaning in that direction if there's nothing to do with Ind currently. So let's talk mechanics and battlefield role. 100% I'm on board with the idea that if ARBAAL the Undefeated is ever defeated, you lose the campaign, straight up. In the lore, the wielder of the Destroyer and champion of Khorne is struck down and warped into a chaos spawn should he ever lose a duel or flee from battle. And it's by far the most unique element of his character. So, don't be cowards, CA. Punish us should we fail Papa Karnef. It's super thematic, and honestly, it's not even really that big a punishment, right? It sounds scary on paper, but if you lose a battle with your main stack, especially in the early game with any faction, not just Khorne and not just ARBAAL, I think most people tend to restart or give up that particular campaign anyway. So make it an Iron Man challenge, where loss with ARBAAL is met with defeat, or the Curse of the Chaos Spawn. Because the other approach here is to then literally change his model into a Chaos Spawn and allow the campaign to continue with a Spawn Legendary Lord. Problem with that, of course, is that it makes zero sense to have a gibbering freak with no rational thought or functioning brain anymore still be your faction leader and Legendary Lord. And they're not going to make a unique and special ARBAAL Spawn model just for a free Lord on a bizarre and rare lose condition, right? So, I mean, yeah, they could give him just a generic Spawn model, but that would also be pretty weird and unfun to play with for the rest of an entire campaign. I guarantee you, everyone's just going to restart at that point if they happen to lose a battle in that way. So I'm really just fine with getting an angry message that says, "You suck, bro. Khorne's cursed you. You lose, idiot," and then move on to the next playthrough. From a lore perspective, his entire shtick is seeking out the Blood God's favor, and the best way to receive it is to take on powerful and numerous armies and butcher them in ever more intensely bloody and bony ways. To get so much head, your horde wakes up in Sleepy Hollow. What that means is, the boons of Khorne are the driving force and impetus for your conquests, and seeking out mighty armies to fight and sacrifice should be your calling card. Doesn't need to be super complex, it just needs to give you some cool bonuses and encourage you to go everywhere and fight everything and get into some really big scraps. He is not an empire builder or an erector of impressive infrastructure. It's battles, 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 kill for Khorne all the way down. And in the wake of the ruins you leave behind, sure, you'll passively expand a bit, but it's not about making a big empire in and of itself. Now on the battle side, I am sincerely hoping he will have his unique banner on the back of his mount. All his art indicates that that's a really important part of his model, of his entire persona, at least when mounted on the Hound of Khorne. And I fear he will look quite generic without that banner if CA decides not to give it to him. Now, banners do not have a great track record in the Total War Warhammer trilogy, but I'm hoping, because he is a Legendary Lord, they're going to put that extra time in. Rapunzel didn't get hers. Maybe we'll see it with ARBAAL. I have not seen it in any art so far, but we haven't seen him on the Fleshhound yet. We've only seen him on foot. In terms of looking a bit generic, I actually don't have a problem with his model at all, simply because he comes from earlier editions, and he has that classic Chaos Armor looking vibe. He's not copying other generic Chaos Lords. They're copying him. Same kind of vibe as Harry the Hammer, honestly. So I actually like his visuals a lot. But if he's on his Town of Khorne without his banner, I will be a sad panda. Mounted up, expect a mobile, extremely powerful one-man army with ridiculously over-the-top melee stats due to the high heavens, because in a faction filled to the brim with powerful, god-blessed champions, we're talking about all the mono gods as a collective, he's up there pretty much with anyone. As we've said, he's exalted above many of them and widely considered in that highest tier of strength and might, the mightiest of Archaon's 13 lieutenants. Buffs to mortal cavalry like Skull Crushers would be quite fitting, I believe. We don't really have a mounted cavalry commander for Khorne yet, at least not on the mortal side. Skulltaker might do some stuff with Blood Crushers once he's mounted on Kultairon, but we've seen his main buffs, and most of that is for the Bloodletters and Exalted Bloodletters. But Chaos Knights and Skull Crushers for ARBAAL would be really fun to run alongside his Hound of Khorne. And that's about what we should expect from the newest free legendary lord in Warhammer 3. I don't know that his campaign will be quite as involved as, say, Epidemius, who set a really high note in Thrones of Decay, but that's in part due to how straightforward Khorne is in both battle and campaign. There's no ulterior motives or empire building really, just battles, blood, and skulls. Let me know what you all think of ARBAAL the Undefeated and what you'd like to see for him in campaign. I'll see you all in the next video. Any Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.